and the theory part. So for example, you might be asked, what are the three components? Explain them, or I might ask you to explain one of the particular components. What I mean by the three components are these here: the actual data, what makes up the actual data. It's a seasonal component, the trend component, and one we didn't calculate is called a random or the residual. So you'll find those in your notes as well, and maybe in some past exam paper solutions, but definitely in the notes. I think it's in the first page, page and a half. You'll find that there.
Okay.
So and always back it up with examples. Another type of question that tends to be asked is for a company, for example, if this was like a bank, your home loan approvals, or a mortgage broker, or if it was if you were selling a particular product and you saw a drop in sales or an increase in sales, whatever it was, whatever trend was happening for you. The question that is it's a nice kind of question to ask, because it kind of try to draw out what you understand about the topic and how it might relate to the data, to real world data. And by the way, a lot of my data that I put in exams is actual data that I source. Okay, so it's a lot of it is not fictional. So these home loan approval data, they were actual numbers at the time. So if you were a mortgage broker or a bank, you might be interested to find out what the trend is in home loan approvals, or what the seasonal effect is. And the question might be, why would a business or a bank or a broker, whatever you're talking about, why would they be interested in time series analysis to help them with forecasting? And what might be the errors to time series as a forecasting tool? Remember, forecasting is like a crystal ball, okay? It always doesn't work, okay? But it just helps us guide us in terms of where the data is likely to head. So if you were to look at this, for example, to answer that question, and it is a good question, okay, and if I rewrite notice, okay, why would a business be interested in time series as a forecasting technique? And what errors are likely to occur? Write that down. So I'm going to just briefly discuss that in the context of this question then. Okay, so you might want to scribble something down if you need to quickly write your notes. Okay, I'm just going to visualize this for you, okay? Again, I'm just going to draw that diagram. And I don't expect you, please don't draw the diagram. You're going to be wasting your time. But look at, as I said, I do have plenty of time, so if you do really want to sketch something, you'll do it. But this is your diagram, okay? And if you were a mortgage broker, and at the time, I don't have years down here, but look, you're going from 2015 to 2018. And if we knew post-financial crisis, people weren't being approved for loans or mortgages, okay? And you see the declining rate over that time period. So that wasn't good for the mortgage broker in terms of business, right? And they want to forecast and want to identify if this is going to continue trending negatively. Obviously, there's always going to be a turning point. And also you want to find out the seasonal effects of this as well, because you might want to hire seasonal workers. Okay, if you were a tourism business, you'll hire seasonal workers if you know that there's going to be a peak in business or a drop in business because of the seasonal effect. So why would you be interested in it? Okay, obviously you break it down into your components. You're interested because you want to notice the trend or how it's trending. If it's declining, you might have to take unfortunate action by having to lay off people. You might want to cut back on stock. You might want to be looking for potential financing the business in the near future to help you cover working capital. So these are all the elements that you could go in, and you can elaborate more if you want to. There's also, in terms of trending, you could spot that people may not want to be buying houses anymore. They might prefer to rent, okay, because they don't want to be tied up with a mortgage for 30-year period, okay? Or if this was a business, you might have a product, but all of a sudden it's starting to decline, and it's because your product was a fad and people weren't really buying it anymore, okay? They might have alternatives, an alternative interest, such as online gaming, as opposed to traditional jigsaw puzzles or something like that. So there you want to find out if it's trending, if the trend is going to continue to decline, or vice versa, if the trend is going to continue to rise. Do you start ordering more product in order to fulfill demand? For example, lately I'm trying to get the VR headset, the Oculus Quest, and it's just completely sold out. And anytime they come out with more units, they get sold out straight away. And it's all because of trending for the likes of online, anyway, online gaming, or if you want to go into virtual meetups and that type of thing. So there's a huge trend in that, and you'd like to know if there's going to be a spike and whether there's a seasonal effect. And obviously there is a seasonal effect with the likes of toys or games, for example, because it tends to peak maybe during the Christmas period. Okay, so we don't know you can keep all of this general. You don't have to refer to the actual data, okay? Because the question that I'm asking you is not specifically related to the question that you just asked, but I think it's good crutch to fall back on, and you can always use the question like the mortgages here, or if it's toys or whatever it is, as a crutch to help you integrate it into your answer. So we just discussed a trend there, the seasonal effect I was touching on. You want to identify if your product is seasonal. Should you be buying more ice cream or making more ice cream for the summer period? Should you be making more or less for the winter period? If it's toys, do you anticipate demand? So all of this anticipation. Do you need to hire more workers? Do you need more financing from banks to help you get through a very busy period? Or do you have to rely on an overdraft facility on a very quiet period if you're not pulling in sales? And then the last part to that question, just going back to that kind of first part, why is it useful and why are they interested in it? They're interested in it because they want to extrapolate. What I mean by extrapolate is go beyond what doesn't exist yet. For example, 2019 does not exist yet for this company or this data. So we want to be able to forecast what the expectation is in terms of the trend and the seasonal component. And you might see there seems to be a pickup in mortgage approvals. Okay, the blue line. Okay, so that who knows, that could be just a seasonal effect and it might decline again. Okay, so you want to be able to forecast, and so to be able to anticipate with employment or buying new product or raw material or whatever it is. The second part of that question is, why is it prone to error? Can anyone tell me why forecasting using time series could be prone to error?
I was going to ask you, how would it work, say, for example, like at the moment? So how would companies be able to use that properly for something like hand sanitizer or something now? Because obviously now everybody wants hand sanitizer, but how are they ever going to know how long this is going to go on for?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's something that if you look back on the formula, y is equal to t plus s plus or. I only dealt with the two components, and I really should have went on to the residual, but I'm bringing the residual into this last part because it perfectly addresses and falls into your example, and I'll use your example. The residual component is, or also known as the random component. If you recall, the last question I did for this topic was, if you remember, I was doing up a question for the exam, and it was based on tourism numbers in Hong Kong. And tourism numbers became decimated in January because of the coronavirus over there. It wasn't expected. So you could have forecasted, if you flip this chart in front of you, flipped it around, you'll have a positive upward sloping trend line, an actual data line. That's what tourism looked like in Hong Kong. And all of a sudden there was a vertical line drop all the way down to close to zero. So no one was going to Hong Kong. So you didn't expect that. So all of these people who might have had bought apartments for Airbnb, bought in a lot of food, oil, whatever it is, with this anticipated increase in numbers that was projected to continue on, are left with too much stock. They're not making sales and so on. And that, so that's your residual or your random effect. Randomness means we cannot forecast something that's unexpected or random. And that's why the time series is prone to errors, because it is residual. So for example, the randomness of what's happening today is causing a lot of difficulty with businesses all around. So you could have anticipated, for example, business to pick up in the month of March and April and May, and you were buying up stock for example, Pennies could have bought up a lot of spring, summer clothing ready to sell, and they had to shut down their business because of the random effect. And they didn't anticipate that. So their forecast of what was going to be a seasonal component to them ended up being totally destroyed because they didn't expect something that was going to catch them out with this virus. And likewise with hand sanitizers, they didn't expect the demand to peak so much, so they couldn't keep up with it. And all of a sudden, then you have other businesses like Christian Dior and so on trying to make hand sanitizers because they had the ability to do that, turn their perfumeries or their factories, perfume factories, into hand sanitizer factories to catch up with demand. So a lot of these residual components is going to make us prone to errors, and we will not forecast it. Okay. For example, like who could have forecast? Well, what we're on right now is Zoom. No, hardly anyone was using this platform, but all of a sudden, with this random effect, they didn't expect the numbers of people to be using their product over the last couple of months. That's another example of where forecasting fails because of the residual or the random component.
So could you say that it kind of almost could limit you as well?
Oh yes,
if
it can.
Prepared, you know. Exactly,
in a bad way. Even whether it's going to be good for business or bad for business, it's still going to affect you badly because it's going to catch you out. You might not have the capacity to meet demand. Granted, you're busy, you're trying to push all of this out. You can't keep up with that demand. And likewise, we're all affected. Like whatever products we were consuming, or you might like to have gone for coffees, or for something like that, or shopping, whatever it might be. You're not doing it now. Okay, so you're part of the whole country who are not consuming goods. And if your family, if anyone here has a family business, or even farming, these are all affected because of what's happening now. And that was a residual. No one would have protected yourselves from an event like this from happening. Look into that question. Why would these businesses be interested in time series as a forecasting tool, and why is it prone to error? And even if you look back here to the question on Excel, look at this. There's a reason why I decided not to ask you not to forecast Q3 and Q4. Can anyone tell me why I decided not to ask you that?
Negative.
Yeah. Because what we have here, if you want to put in your S value, negative 1.13. Okay, your trend ends up being negative. Okay, so 0.7 minus 1.1. Okay, so it's very hard to get a negative trend because mortgage approvals, the lowest approval that you'll get is a 0. There's no such thing as a negative approval. So we're saying the trend is going negative. And then what's actual home loan approvals? Negative 2.23. There's no such thing as negative home loan approvals. There's only 0. So in a way, we might have, with that forecast, predicted the bottom of the home loan approval market, and it might have started to pick. If I got updated these numbers, we'd probably see a pickup because you can't get less than 0. So there's another example of where it's prone to error, and I don't think anybody might have spotted that in the exam. But look, I'm not going to be, if you cover everything else, and I'm not going to be expecting everyone to look for something like this where you have a negative. But just notice that if it's negatively trending, it can never ever go less than 0 for product sales. The company's going to shut down.